prompt edit recording. Okay. We're also going to be doing meeting notes as well. So those should be up sometime next week. I shared a lot of the links to the email list that we have. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the sign-in link as well. So we do have a sign-in link. It's a Google form. Part of that, it asks if you're interested in being kind of on the email update list. So you'll get meeting announcements and meeting reminders and things like the meeting recording. So Sherry's going to share that into the chat for the Google form. And one of the questions that's on there is, if you would like to be on that list, please share your preferred email contact so that we can make sure that you get on there and you can have access to all of that information as we send it out. For those of you who are joining us this evening via Zoom, either through the app or over the internet, you are able to toggle on and off your mute switch. So along the kind of toolbar or taskbar on the far left side, there should be a little microphone that says mute. And so it allows you to kind of mute and unmute. I'm going to be talking as briefly as I can get my spiel down, and then we're going to open up to discussion. And so at that point, I'll be kind of moderating folks, and that's when you can mute and unmute so that you can share your manaʻo and discuss with the group. Those of you that are calling over the telephone, you are also able to mute and unmute, and you just have to dial star and the number 6. So star and the number 6 will mute you, star and the number 6 will also unmute you. And just wanted to kind of carry off of what Auntie Cora included in her pule this evening. Very important that this forum, it's open to community folks. It's open for participation. Really appreciate everyone who's willing to share their manaʻo, as well as just being with us this evening to listen in. But just a reminder that you can never be too kind, you can never be too respectful, you can never be too courteous. And I think that it's also important that we do our best to let as many folks chime in as they can. And so if you have spoken once or twice already, if you're able to kind of put your manaʻo into the chat box or hold on your manaʻo just for a bit to allow other folks a chance to speak, I think that would be really great and allow kind of everybody the opportunity to speak up. Again, we have the chat box going, so if you're comfortable or prefer, you're welcome to just put questions, comments, whatever it may be, into the chat box. And then once we open up for discussion, you're also able to share your manaʻo by muting or unmuting. Okay, so the next bit, agenda, Belina Pule housekeeping is Pau. We're gonna do real quick project team self-introductions for those of you who haven't had a chance to join any of the other meetings yet. I'm gonna do a very, very quick slideshow and then we're gonna open it up for discussion. If we can start with the self-introductions, I'm actually gonna stop share again so it's easier to kind of see the gallery of folks. Now, again, my name is Lily Makaʻila, part of Townscape Inc. We are a consultant that's working on this plan with Maui County Department of Water Supply. And we have, our two go-to folks from DWS with us this evening. Eva, if you don't mind starting with an introduction.
I will. Aloha, everyone. I'm Eva Blumenstein. I think most of you heard about me already, but for those I have not met yet, I'm the planning program manager for Department of Water Supply. I've been with the department for about 20 years in many different capacities, but under many different water directors. My background is in law and environmental studies, in that order. I'm born and raised in Stockholm, Sweden. It's quite a large country with a small population, and people there are very active participants in government affairs. It's a monarchy and a socialist government, and Swedes are not much for hierarchy. So I guess I kind of bring that perspective to working in government in the US, although I have lived more than half my life on Maui. I have worked with DHHL on the Maui Water Use Development Plan and on the USGS groundwater model for East Moloka'I, as DHHL, OHA, and the Water Department funded that study. And I think we have many opportunities to improve our collaboration with DHHL. I hope we can explore that in this plan. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Eva. Marty, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Hi, my name is Marty Buckner. I'm from Kentucky. I've been here for a little over 14 years. I have 3 adult children and 4 grandchildren. I spent 5 years working in a horse hospital in the ICU. And before that, I was a telephone operator. When my children were teenagers, I got my degree in landscape architecture from the University of Kentucky. And after that, I worked in an engineering firm in the community planning division. I'm stoked about working on this Moloka'I water use development plan and working with Townscape and working for Ava. And I'm just really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marty. Appreciate it. Bruce, if you wouldn't mind.
Aloha, everybody. I'm Bruce Tsuchida. I'm the principal planner at Townscape. A little bit about my background. I was born in 1944, a long time ago. My parents were Japanese Nisei people who grew up in San Francisco and who were put into one of the so-called internment camps during the war. Camp was called Topaz. It was located in the Utah desert. They moved to East Coast after the war. I grew up in Queens County, New York. I did my early work in the planning field in the New England area, mostly with small towns. These are towns of 5,000, 10,000 people. So my early company was called Townscape. And when I moved to Hawaii in 1984, and soon after formed my own company, I continued that name. So the company is called Townscape Inc. Although there are no independent small towns, as you know, in Hawaii still, we have tried to do our planning work with and for and by communities. So we've kept that name Townscape. We've been in business now 30 years. So during that period, we've completed several hundred plans, including a number of plans for DHHL communities. So we're pleased to be working with you on this Moloka'I plan. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sherry Hiroka, also with Townscape. I grew up in Pālāʻau in Hilo on Hawaii Island, and grew up a runner and spent a lot of my childhood running around in the forest and checking out tide pools and such, and really got to love conservation and the outdoors and ecology, and got a degree in biology. And most people who go into biology either become doctors or researchers, and I didn't really want to do that. So I spent a few years up at the Volcanoes National Park looking at leaves and bugs until I decided it was time to go back to school and figure out what I really wanted to do, and took all kinds of random classes in farm planning. And I really enjoy how it brings together a lot of disciplines and people and policies and just everything. I love seeing how they all kind of tie in together and work together. And I'm grateful to be able to do that with Townscape, and especially with natural resource planning, which allows me to continue with my my interest in biology. And I'm just really excited to be able to work on this plan for you, for the county, and just excited to learn. So thank you.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Bruce. Okay, so again, my name is Lily Makaʻila. I'm one of the planners with Townscape Inc. Calling in this evening from Kahuku on the North Shore of Oahu. I'm from Oahu, spent most of my life on the island, mostly on the Koʻolau side. Definitely not from Kahuku. My Kane would say that I am not from Kahuku, but I have spent most of my life in Hakipuʻu, which is a very small ahupua'a in Koʻolau Poko. The place that I definitely know the best and that knows me the best, very quiet, very rural, lots of agriculture in that area, wetland area, so a lot of lo'i, lots of springs, lots of streams, close connection to water resources. Even though I live on Oahu, we do have country out here. So I would say that my preference, and I've been pretty lucky to work with a lot of rural communities, Native Hawaiian communities, agricultural communities. It's the kind of perspective and worldview that I understand the best. Was very lucky to study ʻŌlelo Hawai'i for my undergrad at Manoa, and then ended up doing planning for my graduate studies at Manoa, and started with Townscape in 2018. I've also been super lucky to work with DHHL folks, mostly on regional plans. My coworker, Gabby, actually got the Moloka'I regional plan, so I missed out on getting to work on that one. But I worked on the Kealakekela Iopua one, Papakolea, and I'm currently working with Kapolei folks to work on their regional plan. So definitely appreciate being able to work with DHHL communities. And just wanted to give a quick shout out to some of the homesteaders who reached out to us early on when we were announcing this meeting series and let us know that it was really critical that we have a meeting just for DHHL homesteaders to be able to talk about water resources. So mahalo for the open communication and for the guidance. Wanted to get into a quick slideshow again. So I'm going to share screen. I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. So a little bit of background about the Moloka'I Water Use and Development Plan. So this plan is required by the Hawaii State Water Code. In that water code, it says that each county is responsible for funding and producing a water use and development plan. And kind of the meat and potatoes of that plan is to look at what's the existing water systems and water resources, what's the projected population growth and need over time, and how do we plan to meet that future growth and need. I think it's also important to understand that it's not just about those pieces. It's really important that we have more of a holistic view. Water resources are more than just, the domestic and agriculture, irrigation, water systems. It's really about the water resources themselves, both on land, groundwater and surface water, all those springs and streams, the aquifers, as well as that interaction with the nearshore environment. And there's a huge social aspect of traditional and customary practices, as well as people's need for domestic potable water, and also water for agriculture and irrigation. So it's a very broad plan, and we're going to do our best to look at water resources from a holistic perspective. Maui County chose to do these plans by island. So 2011, they completed the Lanai Water Use and Development Plan. 2019 is when the Maui Water Use and Development Plan, kind of the draft plan was put out to the public, but it's actually still being worked on right now and is still under review by the county council. So in order for the plans to be accepted, it needs to be accepted by the county council. And it also, in this case, needs to be accepted by the Commission for Water Resource Management. So those are two of the agencies that kind of oversee it, besides being accepted by the broader community as well. Moloka'I Water Use and Development Plan, officially we got the go ahead to start in March. So we're very early on in the planning process. This is a long planning process. So timeline is going to be 20 to 30 months. So probably 2 years, maybe a little bit longer. The reason for that is because there's a lot of data and research that needs to be gathered and put together. There's a lot of conversations that need to happen with community folks, and every kind of iteration of the plan, when we put together a preliminary draft or a draft, that needs to go out to both agency and community folks so that we can get everybody's comments, reviews, guidance, and then move on to the next phase and make sure that all of those different key points, all of those different manaʻos and comments that are collected are integrated into the plan so that the final product, once it's pau, is something that is reflective of Molokaʻi Island and its people, and also meets all of the requirements of the State Water Code. I wanted to talk about kind of two main things. One is some of the water issues that we have had folks share with us thus far, and also talk about some of the water resources, like valuable water resources that folks have shared with us so far as well. So starting just with water issues, one thing we've heard was kind of the geography of water demand. The central and west side aquifers are kind of the drier areas and, drier aquifer systems, whereas the east side has plenty water. And yet central and west side has kind of this larger population, and they need water resources well. So how do you balance where folks are living versus where the water kind of naturally occurs and is found in the aquifer systems? We've also heard a lot about ʻUalapuʻe aquifer, that 3 of the main groundwater wells are pumping in that aquifer, and that there's a lot of concern about how that's affecting the aquifer system and how that kind of affects the broader community. We've also heard about the conflict between water withdrawals and the effect on stream and spring flow to the nearshore waters and how that's affecting the fish ponds and the environment. We've also heard about the importance of recharge, and that folks who are actively removing water from the aquifers should also be planning for how to compensate for what is removed and how to recharge the aquifers. We've heard quite a bit about Moloka'I Ranch, both from the fact that it's currently owned by a foreign kind of investment company and that it is for sale, and how that kind of unclear future affects everybody on the island, because not only are they a water operator of a water system, but they're also a major landowner, as well as the concerns about the stream diversion up Mauka above Kaunakakai town, Kawela area. We've heard about the deer and ungulate overpopulation on the island, and the, even down to just the public health concern of having so many animals, and also the effect on the watershed of that overpopulation. We've also heard about homesteaders who are on DHHL lands who are not currently served by water systems and have not been for quite a while, and how that affects homesteaders and their ability to live on the land and not just have domestic water, but also whatever they're farming as well. And we've heard about the update to the DHHL water system, and that this update is not able to expand the existing water system, but it will hopefully bring necessary repair and replacement to what is existing. We've also heard some folks sharing about the DHHL groundwater reservation and manaʻo on that and its effect on water resources across the island. And we've also heard folks talking about the ʻUalapuʻe subsistence ag homestead, and its status as a priority project in the regional plan, and how folks are kind of hoping to move that project forward so that the homestead subdivision will have access to water. Some of the things that we have heard as far as water resources, we heard some stories about different places, including Ha'ehaʻeku and Kualapuʻu, Ahupua'a, an area. We heard about the kiha or mo'o deity named Kapualei. We also heard about north-south connections. So between Pelekuno and Kamiloloa areas, both between families having ililele and also physical connections between the lava tube and thus the resources. We've heard about limu along the shorelines and kind of the change in the growth of limu and appearance of limu over time. We've also heard about some Moloka'I connections, for instance, Hihiwai and O'opu in the streams, and how as some of these streams are losing their flow and not able to reach the ocean, the effect that that has on the life cycle of O'opu and Hihiwai. We've heard a little about the blue holes that are found in the offshore reef, where the coral doesn't grow because the fresh water kind of comes up from springs out in the ocean, and how those areas are very important fishing grounds and resources. And we also heard about Waiakekua in the east side up Mauka as a water source. So these are some of the things that we've heard. Definitely not a complete list. We're hoping to hear more from folks. If you want to elaborate on anything that I've talked about so far, if you want to add to the discussion and bring up new things. The kind of purpose for this gathering is to make sure that we're hearing from homestead folks and that we are better understanding your perspective on water resources and making sure that we are able to look as comprehensively as possible. So that being said, I'm gonna stop sharing, open it up to kind of the gallery for folks to comment. Anybody who called in, let me just scroll down real quick on the participants, see if we have anyone on the phone. Okay, so we have one person that called in on the phone. I'm gonna open up discussion to you first, because it is a little bit trickier when you don't have full access to the app. So caller, if you wanted to share any manaʻo at this time, go ahead and dial *6. It will unmute you and flag you, and you're welcome to share any manaʻo. If you didn't want to, or you wanted to wait until later, that's totally fine. So just dial *6 and then you can unmute yourself. It'll give me a little notification and I can kind of moderate and turn over to you. Anybody else who wants to speak up, if you're able to, you can raise your hand in the app. You can turn on your camera, physically raise your hand, or you can just unmute on here. In the taskbar, bottom left corner, there's a little microphone. And you can unmute there. And of course, anyone who's calling in over the internet or the app, you're welcome to post into the chat box. I'm going to be hopping back and forth, and we'll do my best to kind of read out anything that's in the chat box. So I'm going to start with that real quick. From Auntie Lori, she talked about water resources, Waihanau and Kalaupapa. Also, Uncle Glenn Teves said, Waihanau as a former water resource for Hoʻolehua and possibly a future resource for Kalamaʻula. Oh, Auntie Cora asked if she can share a map. Yeah, sure.
Let me know when I can.
Okay, did you want to share screen?
Yeah, I want to share screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it all right? Okay.
Yeah, it should.
Can you see it?
Yep, can.
Okay. Let's see. Let me see if this is the one I want to share. Okay. So I just wanted to share. Aloha, everyone. I wanted to share that you spoke earlier about holistic, and I wanted to share that although it's a holistic approach, I think it would be beneficial to look at ʻAhapuaʻa in different districts, because a lot of this water, and you know what, first of all, the HHL, we have one meeting, and so I took this slide. This slide don't belong to me. So I want to cite that this is from Department of Hawaiian Homeland, and I'm using it for just an example. When we look at different ʻAhapuaʻas, we're looking at these veins. This is all the water veins. And so I wanted to share that part of this, when I was looking at this, is that many of us that is on the call might be from different ʻAhapuaʻas, and some of the veins don't really affect certain ʻAhapuaʻas. And I just wanted to share that because, so with that being said, I'm gonna get off, I'm gonna take this off, but I wanted to share this because this is important. Sometimes we tend to impose on each other's ʻAhapuaʻa when it's far apart and it's not relevant. So I wanted to share that light. So let me stop sharing. With also, there are several things you shared, but one thing I wanted to say is that you've been gathering a lot of the information, but we haven't been getting information from Maui County. And I tell you why. Maui County has codes. I don't know if this was said before. I don't quite understand the codes, but along with Maui County, which it also said that they would honor the water codes, and in the water codes, it refers to HRS 174C. Okay, now with that being said, you also have the Moloka'I Island Community Plan. Now with that, there's so many. Then you got the Moloka'I Regional Plan from DHHL. Now we got so much plans, it's unbelievable. But each plan make reference to rules and regulations, policies and procedures, and administrative rules. Now, it's all great to gather all this information, but will your plan coincide to make sure that all of this is working in it has to work together, because I can just see this whole thing in conflict. The other thing I wanted to share is that we talked about reusable water. In California, they've been selling those water that's been reusable. Well, I wouldn't want to see that on Moloka'I, because first of all, everything's so high in expenses. So I wanted to shed light with that. The other thing I wanted to say, ʻUalapuʻe water tank. Okay, so there's an executive order. Hey, that's all great and dandy, but if we're going to honor HRS 174C, I would hope that we're able to somehow connect pipes from the water tank. And therefore it wouldn't affect the withdrawal from the lower part of where they're pumping the water out. Anyway, I think it makes sense a little bit. And then I wanted to share one more. Sorry, guys, I'm really sorry. The water tank is selling sea worm. Bro, we can always talk over here all night, but sea worm, bro, I'm gonna tell you what, unless those policy changes, they can drag their feet forever. You know, and that's, guess what? That's all money of ours that we pay, and they can drag it on. And that's not fair to us homesteaders. Mahalo. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Auntie Cora, much appreciated. I do want to get to one thing that you mentioned. So for Maui County, we are lucky to have Maui County folks working with us in partnership. So as far as collecting information, we are looking at gathering, you know, like as much water data as we can from all the different water operators and water purveyors. And, you know, Moloka'I is very interesting because, so mostly on Oahu, it's Board of Water Supply. Yeah, that's the main water purveyor for almost the entire island. Get a few other water purveyors, but Moloka'I is very unique because you have DHHL, you also have Maui County, you have Moloka'I Ranch, you have Kawela Plantation, and then you have other smaller water purveyors on top of that. And so gathering information from all the different purveyors is very difficult. We don't necessarily have teeth like enforcement to force everyone to give us the most up-to-date information. So we are doing our best to get that information. And we have to ask folks to provide it and ask them again, and then, you know, stalk them a little bit and get them to give us as much information as we can. So that's something we are working on. And that's something that we will be including in upcoming meetings. So probably the next phase of meetings is where hopefully we'll have that information that we can share with folks. So it is in the works now. It is a challenge. So those of you who have worked on, that were on the working group prior, or worked on these different working groups or planning committees, you guys definitely understand how difficult it is. Oh yeah, Auntie Lori mentioned that is one of the main issues, getting real data. So yeah, that's something that we're working through right now. And we do intend to present that information to folks, share that with folks, and have discussions in upcoming meetings. So just wanted to kind of tackle that as best we can. The next thing that I wanted to mention is mahalo for mentioning the different plans. So it can get kind of confusing with as many plans that are out there. But when we are looking at holistic planning, it's important that we are, number one, aware of the different plans. So all the plans that you mentioned, the community plan, the island plan, also the DHHL regional plan, those are plans that we are using as reference and guidance documents. Also things like the Moloka'I Water Working Group, they had a paper that they put out with recommendations. Those are also part of kind of our guidance documents in how we're approaching this, and making sure that we have, are doing our best to not, you know, reinvent the wheel. Yeah, there's plenty of information that's been put in there. And so it's our kuleana to make sure that we're including that as best we can. Comment in the chat, again from Auntie Lori, all the plans have to adhere to the water code. That's correct. Okay, I want to open up for more folks who want to share. If you want to share, you're welcome to turn your camera on, raise your actual hand, raise a hand virtually. You're also welcome to just unmute, and you'll pop up to the top of my little list and I can call on you as well. Or you're welcome to put any of your manaʻo into the chat box. Auntie Lori, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Sorry for background noise, but I'm on Oahu Hatu'kam dentist. But I noticed again, Kalaupapa, I wanted to raise Kalaupapa, especially because this is a DHHL meeting. I don't want people to forget that all of the main town and the main town central in Kalaupapa is DHHL owned lands. And so I think it's, again, important that this plan includes Kalaupapa. Much some people don't know, but through the state condemnation process, the Valley of Waihana was condemned from the Meyer family, and the water resources from that was diverted to Kalaupapa and to the lands that is owned by the Department of Hawaiian Homelands. While there's not homesteading there, that's not to say that that's not going to be true in the future. And so looking forward, the water use development plan should include Kalaupapa. Thank you.
Mahalo nui. That has come up by a couple other folks too. Mahalo again to Auntie Lori for bringing up Kalaupapa / Kalawao County. So another interesting kind of uniqueness for Moloka'I Island. Most of the island, yeah, everything topside is a part of Maui County, but Kalaupapa is technically Kalawao County, which is managed, administrated by the Department of Health. It's our understanding that your Moloka'I Council members are working to have Kalawao County kind of wrapped back in with the rest of the island from an administrative perspective. So that's something that folks should definitely look into, and I would reach out to your council person for more information about that. As far as we have discussed, the original scope does not include Kalawao County, does not include Kalaupapa, because this is a Maui County plan, and their directive is to look at kind of the scope of Maui County. That being said, it is one island, and all of the water is interconnected, and we're very much understanding of that, and have heard folks manaʻo. And so we're continuing to work with Eva and Marty, and we'll figure out how we can include it into the scope. So yes, it's not in the original scope that was approved by CWRM, but we definitely hear folks, and we're gonna figure out a way to make sure that we're addressing Kalaupapa and Kalawao County to the best of our ability in this plan. So mahalo again for that. A couple folks have chimed in the chat, so I'm going to hop over to that. Anyone else who wants to share, again, feel free to unmute and you'll pop up to the top, raise your hand or drop a comment in the chat box. So Uncle Glenn shared EPA has designated Moloka'I as a sole source aquifer. So we need to look at Moloka'I in a holistic way. Even with the creation of sectors, this is not real and is a way to spread out wells as not to create cones of depression and intrusion of salt water in the wells. We really don't know how much water we have, and we have to err on the side, on the safe side, a la the precautionary principle. I agree on inclusion of Kalaupapa. Mahalo, Uncle Glenn. Okay, for anyone who's just joining us, mahalo nui. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind dropping in the chat box the sign-in link. So the sign-in link, you know, collects kind of general information. It's also another outlet. If you don't want to post in the chat, there's a section in there where you can share some of your manaʻo about water resources, critical water issues. And also for those of you who want to get email updates about upcoming meetings, get a prompt about when we post these recorded meetings online, then please share a preferred email contact in that sign-in sheet. Question from Auntie Cora, will Maui County drill another well away from DHHL's well? It's my understanding that there are no plans right now, but I'm going to turn it over to Eva.
Thanks, Lily. The Kualapu aquifer, the department system that serves Kaunakakai, needs a backup well. There is no backup well right now to the Kualapu Maka well. So that will need to happen at some point. But the primary well that's there now, there's no current plans to drill like another production well.
Thank you, Eva.
May I, this is Cora. May I do a follow-up question?
Sure.
That was Eva, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Eva, my understanding was that it wasn't an option. My understanding was that you guys were supposed to drill well. So is this an option or a discretion?
Well, so right now we have an existing use permit for the Kualapuʻu well, and over the years, you're probably aware the pumpage between well 17, DHHL wells, and the department well have had various impacts on each other in terms of chlorides and water levels is concerned as well. So we kind of commissioned this USGS model to, of course, looking at the discharge to the coastal zone, but also trying to find or optimize pump scenarios. How can these wells work to optimize pumpage throughout the aquifer with minimal impact on each other and discharge to the coastal zone? So there are some pump scenarios where we have sited well, sort of potential well sites within a little outside that current well field. And some of those pump scenarios look okay. It wasn't one that was completely optimal that would satisfy all well owners or operators' needs. But so that's still something that's considered. A new site that is away from the current site, that's a brand new water use permit. So right now, we have our existing use permit for the 516 MGD. And we have looked at alternative sites on private lands, on DHL land. We have looked at decreasing there's a pending water use permit allocation for 0.9 MGD, looked at decreasing that to something more realistic that should really be tied into this process of, what is the most feasible long-term potable and non-potable demand for Kapaʻakea. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Eva. There were a couple questions that popped up in the chat. So I might ask you for your kokua again, Eva. So there's a comment from Auntie Lori about there might not be any more funding. From Auntie Cora, USGS already did a study and how it affects each other. Auntie Lori asked, please share costs associated with experimental research, drilling, and where. Auntie Lori, can you expand on that question a little bit?
Maybe Eva can comment on the new permit that she was just talking about. Because I know in the past, when we had USGS and the Water Use Development Plan, the big stumbling block was cost. And we were looking at partnerships. The county was looking at partnerships for drilling. They also on siting, getting away from the Kualapuʻu aquifer, and they're moving to Kavela, near Kavela Plantation. And then they didn't have the millions of dollars or $1 million that would cost to do experimental drilling there. Actually, we get plenty of questions. That's not gonna take 2 years. But I kind of like, yeah, then it fell off the radar because at one point we even put a moratorium on new buildings, new home development in East Moloka'I, because it was almost like upcountry Maui where you had to find the water. Like before you could build, you had to get water. So, but the county wasn't giving out any new water use like permits. So what happened? I mean, that was years ago. We never have water, and we was over pumping. So what happened in the meantime? Did development stop, or did we find another resource?
Okay, thank
like
you, Auntie
Cara
Laura.
asked.
There was a lot of questions, but on the ʻUalapuʻe side there, yeah, I mean, the need for a backup well goes way back. That was like the initial effort before the 2004 or before that, when I was not really involved in the Water Use Development Plan initiative back then, but that's still the case. We still need a backup well. So right now we have the sort of a gentleman agreement with DHL. Our pump goes down, they're nice enough that we can rely on their system for a while, and vice versa. So that's one thing. Maybe we need to kind of formalize that so we know that we can back up each other. But the department is looking at a true backup well, but there, to my knowledge, and it wasn't in the FY22 CIP budget for the department. I don't know about the FY23, it might be. But again, that would just be the true backup, like a contingency wells. That would not be new production. The existing well, we are within our water use permit meeting the current needs of Kapaʻakea, Kualapuʻu, but it needs an amended water use permit to address projected demand, for long-term demand. On the east side at ʻUalapuʻe well, there's actually 2 shafts there. One is the backup. There is a moratorium. There are no water meters issued. And I think engineering ceased issuing meters there since around 2016 or so, maybe a bit earlier.
Eva, if you wouldn't mind, because we talked about it briefly in the East Moloka'I regional meeting, if you could share just a bit about the ʻUalapuʻe well system and the permit that you folks put in to expand on the water allocation, just so that folks understand why that moratorium is in place and why the county isn't able to issue new water meters at this time.
Sure, yeah. Just real briefly, there is an existing wood use permit for ʻUalapuʻe shaft that's been inadequate for a very long time. Some of the changes came with changes to the Safe Drinking Water Act, where there's requirements for maintaining minimum chlorine residuals in the system. You need to have sufficient disinfection and other related issues, but that pretty much required now that that system is occasionally flushed. It needs to be flushed because it's this long 9-mile or so distribution or transmission line that is not, normally you have some loops in the system, so you have more water moving, and that's not the case. Lately, it has not, this depends on the demand on the system. Like winter months is usually lower, summer months is higher, so usually that's flushing needs. It's just in the low, when there's more stagnant water in the pipes, it's not really moving. But of course, there's demand, additional demand for building permits there. So the department requested a additional, almost twice as much additional use from the ʻUalapuʻe shaft in 2020, early 2020. And there were a lot of concerns from the community about the additional draw from the aquifer, potential impact on the nearshore environment. There's fish ponds there, etc. So the decision was made in early this year to withdraw that water use permit application. So some more work needs to be done there. There's also demand from DHL, obviously, and that was some of the concerns as brought up with the water use permit, to meet the needs of DHL development in that area. And these two shafts are old, shallow, dug wells in the sea level rise zone that really needs to be replaced, substituted at some point, probably further Mauka. So I think I mentioned that at our last meeting too, that this plan is sort of where we're looking at the long-term demand, looking at the cumulative and holistic demand, not just for department system, but development of DHL and other, maybe expansion of the system. So I think this is kind of an opportunity to not focus so much on what happened the last few years, but moving forward, what is the long-term need for the region, for ʻUalapuʻe as a whole, for Kualapu and the homestead lands as a whole.
Thank you very much, Eva. I do want to hop back to the chat. Couple good comments that were put in there, and also a question about the MIS. So want to go to Auntie Lori made a comment about Kawela Plantation, also expanding water use in that area. Uncle Glenn wrote, I was able to visit the county well for the first time and saw the importance of backup. DHHL can provide backup for the county, but the county cannot provide backup for DHHL. I agree the county would need, the county would need backup, but it will be a challenge to find a sweet water site except east of Kapaʻakea. The county has a backup pump, but it's never been tested and is still in the box. It needs to be tested as to minimize long-term fallback of DHHL pumping to supply Kapaʻakea. Mahalo, Uncle Glenn. Also, there was a question about or comment about the MIS water system. So for Hoʻolehua Homestead, specifically ʻAleʻelua Street, that not everybody has connection to the MIS, and that there's a need for homesteaders to have irrigation or agricultural water from that water source, and kind of what's the process for doing that. Did anybody else want to share about that?
I want to give everyone a chance, but let me know when I can go around again, Lily.
Okay, I will. I'll give folks a little bit more time. Okay, Uncle Glenn, I see your hand is up.
What was the question about ʻAleʻelua?
So the question was, how do folks who are not currently connected to the MIS system, how would they go about getting connected to the MIS system if they're in Hoʻolehua on ʻAʻaleʻua Street?
Okay, they need to check with the Moloka'I Irrigation System office. But some areas in that area might be too high for the reservoir. I know some areas on that road, around by Lanikeha and areas like that, the lots are much higher than the reservoir, and therefore the water cannot be pumped to that area. They would have to check on that, and the irrigation office would be the ones to talk to about that. There may be ways of expanding the system to allow for the water. They have some pumps in the area that might be able to increase the pressure in that area and possibly deliver, but that would be the irrigation office, or they might even tell you to contact Honolulu if it's an infrastructure issue.
Mahalo, Uncle Glenn. Okay, want to give an opportunity to folks again. If you have manaʻo to share, either concerns or critical water issues that you'd like to bring up at this forum, if there are certain water resources that you consider valuable, very important, and want to make sure that we are researching or looking into those spaces, now is a good time to share that with us. Also, if you have questions about anything that we've discussed so far, mahalo Auntie Cora for giving other folks a chance. But if you guys want to chime in, now is a good time to do so. If you're calling in over the phone, you can dial *6, and that will unmute you. It'll pop you up to the top of my list, and I can allow you to share your discussion. If you're calling in over the app, feel free to unmute yourself. Again, I'll get a notification and I can turn the conversation over to you.
Aloha, this is Auntie Cami on the phone.
Hi, aloha, Auntie Cami. Mahalo.
I couldn't get on via the computer, so I'm using my phone. And I just wanted to, on that Aleʻua, well, we're in the same situation where the MIS stopped at the Buchanan's, and then we wanted ag water coming all the way to where we live, lot 4 and lot 6. But like Glenn said, there comes a point where you're going to need to pump. We are getting the MIS, but I think if we went any further than our lot, I don't know if they'll be able to get anything. But anyway, it's on the Lihipali side, the water line. So maybe gravity flow going down. I'm not sure where the lot that they're talking about would be, but maybe gravity flow going down Aleʻua. Just letting you know, I'm listening in on the phone.
Mahalo,
Aloha.
Auntie Cami. Thank you so much.
Hi, aloha, Cami. That was me, Lou Favorito. I'm the one on ʻAʻaleʻua that's having that issue. So thank you to both you and Glenn and to Laurie. So I guess I'm going to have to look into it because that's exactly what I heard. I'm working with the USDA, the Soil Conservation Group, and that's exactly what they just said about the pump issue. So thank you folks very much.
Thank you so much
Okay,
for your
aloha, Lou.
Okay, Auntie Cami, I'm gonna mute you on the phone again, and then if you want to share, feel free to dial *6 and you can chime in again. Okay, comment from the chat, Rufina Ka'awai. I live on Aleʻua. Is there a way that DHHL offers MIS rates for people who need to farm with domestic water? Okay, and then a comment from Auntie Lori. I never understand your sustainable yield map you sent out, just FYI. So that, I think that's the one that I sent out via email. So the sustainable yield map, let me see if I can share that real quick. Ooh, that one's going to be a little hard to pull up on here. So the sustainable yield map, the source for that is the CWRM. So Commission on Water Resource Management. And again, like we've discussed, sustainable yield is a best guess. Uncle Glenn talked about that as well in the chat. And so sustainable yield on that map is the water that's available based on the different aquifer sectors and the aquifer systems. So they have a algorithm and a way that they calculate sustainable yield that is identifying how much water is available in those different areas. For anyone who is able to tune in to the discussion on sustainable yield, what it is and what it's not, that was yesterday's discussion. Mahalo to Jonathan for providing that. I see Auntie Laura, you have your hand up.
I'm sorry, I guess I missed that discussion yesterday. Because I don't know, I never see, I wasn't part of the discussion about sustainable yield, but I heard him talk, I think one time before. But I just wondering how is the commission gonna fix that? Because you, like, what was the last, I mean, there's like absolutely no data, current data that I know of that has occurred, like zero in-stream monitoring, you know, if one maybe over the past several years. So I don't know how the commission can give out any water permits without information. It's just like we just being really arbitrary and piecemeal and all this guessing. And so I just, it's mind-boggling how anybody can operate one fake permit system when we don't even know how much water we get, and because nobody's monitoring it. Is that a true statement? Am I way off? And this is my issue from the last water use development was, how can you strong on people to give you information? We don't even know how many single private wells. And is everybody who does have a permit being forthcoming, except for the people who have one Supreme Court case right now who's been not sharing information for 20 years or more?
Yeah. Mahalo, Auntie Lori. I do want to pester Jonathan real quick, since he happens to be on the call, if he wouldn't mind sharing or touching upon sustainable yield. Also, Jonathan, a quick logistical question. Do you know if yesterday's presentation was recorded and if that might be publicly available sometime in the future?
Aloha, everyone. Thanks, Lily. I didn't just happen to be on the call. I'm here because of my work with DHHL. So along with Gigi Kairal and others. So we're here to make sure that the department is following all of these discussions, particularly this one, but we've been at all the other discussions on the water use and development plan so far. So, so Auntie Lori and others, I was asked by the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Hawaii to give a presentation of my choosing during their seminar series, which is like once a week. And so the presentation I chose to give was called "What does sustainable yield sustain, and what does it, what and who does it leave out?" So I'm going to like drop into the chat just because I had like a 2-sentence summary of the 55-minute chat. Basically, so that it's not even an algorithm. That's like pretty fancy name for saying what the Water Commission does. The simplest version is they take a percentage of recharge and they say that's sustainable yield. And all that means is if everything basically, if wells were optimally spaced across the aquifer, if rainfall was even across the aquifer, if geology was even, the entire thing was a basal lens, that's how much you could pump without harming wells. So the whole point of sustainable yield, the only thing it's set to sustain is the production of water for consumption, not even DHL consumption or domestic consumption, just consumption, period. So the things that this community has spoken about and litigated about for decades, water flowing to the coast for fish ponds and limu and for other things, is explicitly not part of sustainable yield. And so it is best thought of as, under an ideal scenario, the maximum amount of water that might be available for consumption, but it doesn't necessarily sustain the things that we often hear in our communities that are the things that we want to sustain. So I've been told that the talk was recorded. I've been told that they need to, I don't know exactly what this means, but make it ADA accessible. I think that means getting a full transcript, and then I have to okay the transcript. So somewhere within 2 to 4 weeks, it will be posted. I will totally be happy to share that with folks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm here to listen, though. You can stop picking on me.
Okay, will do. Got you. Mahalo, mahalo. I want to hop back over to the chat box real quick. There was a comment in here about I think this one is from Stephanie to Rufina Ka'awai. You can apply for ag rates, check with Michelle on the process. There's also a comment from Uncle Glenn. Fina, this has been a long-term problem. I've been pushing for DHHL to take over the MIS. Right now, MIS doesn't allow hookup to their systems for lots smaller than 2 acres. This is not fair and needs to be addressed. So we don't use expensive, precious domestic water for irrigation. Every homesteader should have access to MIS water to grow food. And also mahalo to Jonathan for the good explanation on sustainable yield. Now I do want to take a minute and acknowledge the time. It is 7:04. We did mention previously that this meeting would be from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That being said, I'm not gonna cut off the meeting until while folks still have manaʻo to share. So for anyone who needs to leave the meeting, we are recording this meeting. It will be posted online. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat box the links for the other meetings that we posted. And then I should actually be able to have a faster turnover on this one and have it posted online tomorrow. So if you're concerned about missing anything, you're welcome to, if you have to leave now, you're welcome to leave and you can check back in and see the recording of this meeting. I also see that I have a hand up. Yep, Auntie Cora. So for anyone who needs to hop off, definitely understand. Otherwise, I'm gonna hang out though and give folks a chance to chime in. Auntie Cora, if you wanna go ahead. And then again, folks, if you have more manaʻo, please drop it into the chat box. Feel free to unmute and I can kind of moderate discussion from there. Auntie Cora, go ahead.
Okay, I know that I had asked several meetings and I never got a response. Does ʻUalapuʻe currently water flushing of the water pipes, is the water still being wasted? I mean, it's a simple yes or no questions.
Okay.
So
yep, Eva unmuted. She's ready.
Yeah, so the water is there. Hasn't been any. So there was a time where there was an automatic flusher on the system that, in my mind, was probably wasteful because there was less control of, that said, that system is now better scrutinized and is manually flushed, but it hasn't been flushed at all since I think I checked in last time was before June, so maybe May or so. The last time when it was flushed, that was last winter, there was a gentleman at the far east end that was willing to take that flushed water onto his ranch, because you can't just go, willy-nilly to the ocean or something. Then I believe that person moved closer to town for whatever reason. We couldn't discharge there, and my understanding is that field ops is still looking for somebody to take that, although there's no flushing going on right now. But that's kind of
okay. Well, I would like to speak more about that because we would like those wasted water. The other question I had is the fire hydrants that are being flushed throughout the east side of the island. I think they do it once or twice a month. I'm not quite sure, but What about those fire hydrants? I mean, those are a lot of water. And if we can recycle them, if we could work something out with Maui County trucks, and kind of take those water. We got farmers that don't even have those water, but we can easily put it in those 270 gallons containers, and use those for farming. So that was my concern. If we can work partnership just to not have it wasted. And, I would like to bring some sort of conversation for our homesteaders that are interested in gathering those water for the purpose of farming. There was just someone on this meeting saying that they don't even have water for farming, and they want to know if they can have MIS. So, there's water out there that's being wasted. If we could gather our resources, that'd be wonderful. Thank
Auntie
you.
Cora.
Thank you.
Eva, if you could share possibly, is there a point of contact that Auntie Cora and other interested folks might be able to, like, who might they reach out to about potentially taking on water that's flushed from the ʻUalapuʻe system?
That can go through me, actually.
Oh, awesome.
Probably the simplest. My email is there. I forwarded the one person that was in charge in the field operations. I think he's retiring as of right now. So
okay,
safest to just direct that to me.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
awesome. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind dropping Eva's email in the chat box. So folks, if you had questions about potentially taking water or talking about the process of being able to take water that's flushed from the ʻUalapuʻe system, Sherry has just put Eva's contact information into the chat box. So be sure to grab that. Eva, do you happen to know who, is it the fire department that has that oversees the flushing of the
No, that's our field operations.
Oh, okay.
For the hydrants.
For the hydrants as well. Okay, so same thing. Auntie Cora, make sure to grab her email information. Okay, for sure. Mahalo, mahalo. Okay. Anybody else have manaʻo? If you wanted to share, feel free to unmute. Feel free to raise a virtual hand, raise a physical hand. Sherry, if you wouldn't mind dropping again the sign-in link. Anyone who hasn't had a chance to sign in, if you could please sign in. It's a good forum as well to share any manaʻo that you may not have been able to put into the chat box, or may not want to share in the open forum. You can share manaʻo in the sign-in, as well as if you'd like to be on the email update list. You'll get notifications about upcoming meetings that are scheduled, reminders about the meetings, and of course links to things like the meeting recordings once they get posted. Sherry also dropped my contact information in there, so you're welcome to reach out to me as well. Okay, I had a quick question about if we're, sorry, one second. So describe if commitment to homesteader meetings will continue through the process. Yes, definitely. I think that it will be something that we'll continue to do. We also were very graciously invited to the Moloka'I Mokupuni meeting and some of the individual homestead association meetings. So wanting to just throw that out there as well. If any of the other homestead associations would like us to, make time or make presentations at any of your planned meetings, please reach out to us. We're very happy to do so. We also are gonna be having multiple series of meetings in the future. Again, the next one that we're hoping to do would be more sharing of information. Once we've kind of compiled more data and we have that information to share with folks, because that has been a big need. Also wanted to address a comment in the chat box. Was it shared already on how these meetings will be incorporated in your planning process and what the next steps for the water use and development plan are? Good question. Mahalo, Sybil, for your question. So these meetings are part of the ongoing kind of community outreach. So it's important that a lot of our content and the direction that we're going in as far as understanding issues, understanding how they affect people, and understanding, how and where that fits into the water use and development plan, that all needs to be guided by community folks. If it's going to be a Moloka'I reflective plan, then it needs to be guided by Moloka'I community folks. So that's part of the purpose of these meetings. As far as the overall planning process, so one bit in the sign-in link is we kind of talked about we asked folks, what is your preferred way of participating? Like I said, it's a long process. Everybody has a lot of things on their plate right now. So we want to kind of gear the format of these conversations and the format for community outreach and ongoing participation to what folks' preferences are. So it asks, do you prefer virtual meetings? Do you prefer, in-person meetings? Of course, we're not able to do in-person today just because of restrictions. And we decided to go virtual because of the high COVID counts for cases that we had on Oahu. But we are looking at being able to hopefully in the future do in-person on island gatherings. We've also had folks suggesting about doing hybrid. So can we potentially do a hybrid of in-person for folks who are not able to access over the internet or over the phone, but still offer the virtual option for other folks as well. We also asked about, is there interest in there being some type of another working group of folks? So that's a good, and then people are even able to share if they have other ideas about what's the best ways for us to kind of continue with community outreach. So we're taking all suggestions and looking at all the different ways that we can have as simple and easy of options for folks to participate. Next steps, like I mentioned, we're in the research phase. So next step is kind of putting together that data, putting together that research, and having that available. So once we kind of get that together and have a corpus of that information, then we can start to plan our next ways of sharing with folks. So next steps would be to continue gathering that data, analyze that data, put it together, and then have it in a format where we can bring it out to folks and get their manaʻo. So not just share the information, but get their manaʻo on what that data kind of means to them and how it affects you. So I hope that answers that question. If anyone else has other manaʻo, please feel free to drop it into the chat box. You should have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me as well. Want to thank everybody for being here. If there's anyone with last minute comments, you're welcome to unmute. Otherwise, it looks like a lot of folks are signing off. So just want to mahalo everyone for being here and mahalo everyone for sharing in the discussion. Thanks, Antikora. Bye. Bye, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Marty. Thank you.
Bye.
Mahalo.
Mahalo nui. Thanks for letting me pick on you.
This time, now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to help if I can. So, we hope.
Ahuiho.
Mahalo for all you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Mango.
I think we should pick on Neil next time.
Okay, yeah, let's do
He
it.
just hung up. He's awfully quiet.
Thank you.
I like
Eva.
that idea.
Well done, Lily.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.